Greetings, Greg here again. Another video showing you how to transform businesses and how to perhaps transform your own life and get more freedom and abundance in it through technology and through creative entrepreneurship. So I already have a previous video I linked to above that showed me kind of just using it for stories and some really basic stuff. And now I'm going to jump in and show a little bit of how you can use it to create games or software or things like that. Even if you're not a really super skilled developer, if you can use it to learn the basics of programming and development and give you templates to start with. It's very impressive. Let's go ahead and do one for an asteroid game. So I'm going to ask it to help me make an asteroid game. Give me a C# game manager for asteroids. Actually, let me say, give me a basic game design document for asteroids, for a game like Asteroids. And so because it knows what Asteroids is, it should be able to do this. And you can see pretty quick here. And you can read this. I'll always pause the video if you want to read it. But we can see that it gives us a pretty basic description of how the game works and how the game plays, and gives us a starting point for actually building the game. And so what I can do now is say to it, what would some of the important C# classes I would need to make an asteroid game. And so this is asking us in a very kind of programmatic term, what classes are we going to need. It'll tell us how much it knows about the game Asteroids. And it's telling us here even the game requirements. 2 to 3 developers, 1 artist, 1 musician will be required to create 3 to 4 months. I think that's probably a little crazy. To maybe get it launched on a platform with like the kind of features you'd expect in a new game. Now notice up here it actually labeled this for us, Asteroids Game Design. And so now let me go ahead and ask it what the C# classes are we're going to need for that. And hopefully it'll be able to come back with an answer here. And it's a way that approaching ChatGPT of, you can't just say make an asteroids game for me. It's a little bit like you would in real life. You got to think of it as a real brain a little bit. Is that you need to start and break it down into these major classes so that we can get responses back that are manageable and that we can refine and tweak as we go along. If I just tell it to just make an entire game, it'll never get anything right enough to be right about it. And some of it's limited to the response. And some of ChatGPT's limitations of what we can really do with it is simply by the fact that it's still somewhat of a research project and it's not really designed to be commercialized. And I think you'll see companies making and using the OpenAI and the ChatGPT tools to make things that are really specific for programmers. But we can see here what we got. We got a playership class, an asteroid class, a game manager class, input manager class, a UI manager, and a sound manager. I can already think of one class we're missing is probably like a bullet class to create the bullet, but that's okay. These are pretty good. Okay, so now the next step of what we might want to do is ask it to give us an example of what this game manager class might look like in C#. Or actually, let's go in order. Let's go in the order it created them in. So we'll say playership. Please write out the C# playership class. And now I'm going to give it some information here. I want it to use left and right arrows for turning, R up arrow for accelerating, for thrust, I'll say. And then I'm going to say R, it can use the WASD keys. And we'll see if it figures that out. And then, so that we're telling it how we want this ship class to work. And then I want to say when the ship will shoot bullets, so we will need a bullet class, the bullets, and also an asteroid class for the asteroids that will be initiated. So this might actually be too much for it here. Let's just go ahead and do this player ship class and see if it has anything about shooting asteroids. Oh, we do have an asteroids class. Okay. So we need bullets. So we need a bullets class, a bullet class that will shoot from the player ship and destroy the asteroids with the spacebar. And then I'll say we will need a bullet class that will shoot from the player ship and destroy the asteroids. And I think that's where we'll start. And so we're giving it quite a bit of information here, and we'll see how much of it uses. So it did create a player ship class. It's got some movement there, a reference to the prefab for the bullets, a spawn point that we'd set on the player ship. That's kind of nice. And look what it did with the WASD thing. I told it I wanted the left arrow R using WASD, and it put that in the code right here for us. And it did the same thing. The right arrow, it knew to use D, and for the up arrow, it knew to use W. By just what I wrote out there, it wrote the code for that, and I just find that pretty fascinating. So the code is complete now, and you can see this is where we would really open up a Unity project and start taking this code and then putting it in and making methods and replacing it out and creating a game out of this. The nice thing is it keeps all of this chat here and everything we've done. So we've got our game design document, we got our player ship class now made for us, and now we could tell it to do some crazy things here, and this kind of stuff really blows my mind. So this actually is taking care in the update of everything to rotate our player right here. So that's what this is going to do. And then this is for the thrust, so it adds force and will make the player ship move. And then we have the shoot. Notice it's the space bar here that shoots. And then here's the thing where it initiates the bullet and actually creates the bullet. And it then adds force to it to make it move. That's here where this add force happens to move the bullet. And then it destroys the bullet after 2 seconds. That way, after the bullet's out of the screen, it'll destroy it. Now, what is this? This is very inefficient because it's recreating that object all the time. Let's try this. Please refactor the bullet shooting to use object. I'm not going to say object pooling. I'm just going to say pooling. See if it figures it out. So it says refactor it to use bullet pooling. I'm going to be honest with you. Before I had it actually did say to use object pooling. So now notice it didn't create a bullet class though. It just we really don't need a bullet class. It is a little heavy. If we had different kinds of bullets and different properties on bullets and things like that. So, but notice what it's doing here. Initialize the bullet pool. So in our start now, it's creating a list of here to hold the bullets, and it's setting them to inactive here as a flag, and and adding the bullets to the list when it starts up. So it creates these objects when it starts, and then it uses object pooling now in the code. So this is now more efficient code that I would have had to have sit and written an object pooling method or hooked in some object pooling library or something like that. But this gives us, especially for certain things, you can imagine in like game jams and things like that, how this could be really powerful to give you the templates of the code for this kind of thing. Otherwise, you could go out and find similar code in places, but it'd take you a long time to copy and paste it and change it and get it all to work, where ChatGPT is able to almost like magically create code based upon what you ask of it. And Asteroids being a pretty common game, it probably has a lot of information to pull from. But I can show you some examples in future videos. Hopefully, you can click like and subscribe. But in future videos, you'd be remarkably surprised at how it can write code about games that it can't possibly have source code for, or very abstract concepts. It'll write source code for games with just completely abstract concepts. So it is very powerful in how it writes code from what you describe and what you ask for. Okay, so this is a reasonable conclusion. So we shoot now, and notice we have this get next bullet feature that it looks through the bullet pool to find the next inactive bullet, and when it finds that next inactive bullet, then it creates it. And but if it can't find an inactive bullet, like if it can't find any, then it increases the pool size. So this here's where the pool size gets increased. So you can't really break the game. It just starts out with 10, I think I saw, which is plenty, or 20. So we could tell it we need a smaller pool, and it'd rewrite this whole thing, and we don't want to take the time to do that. So that's the other thing. ChatGPT has a lot of strengths, but if you tell it to change one little thing, sometimes you're better off just changing it yourself than having it take the time to rewrite an entire method because it did something kind of silly in it. The goal, I would say, for me would be to get something perfectly that I could perfectly copy and paste, but get something to me that gets it close so that I can copy and paste it and then make the changes I need, not keep trying to give it the commands to get it perfect necessarily. But there's a lot of things that about this that's really neat. So this is the player ship method, which looks pretty darn good now, or I should say class. It looks pretty good. So now we can go back up here and see what was the next class. I think it was the asteroid class. Yeah, so the asteroid class. So we can say, please now, I'm going to say great job with the player ship class. Now let's create the asteroid class. Now let's say, now please create the asteroid class. I don't need to say please. Now create the asteroid class. And in fact, I really just need to say that. I'm just saying that great job more conversationally to see if it didn't acknowledge I said that. But now we can see what the asteroid class looks like. So we have a size and a speed. Now the size is useful because the size will break in the smaller asteroids possibly. So we might have like a 3 is how the biggest asteroids, and if it gets shot, it comes and makes two size asteroids, and when one of those 2 asteroids are shot, it makes like 3 1 size asteroid, that kind of thing. And we can see that it doesn't really do anything like that. But we'll see if we can get it to do that. So this looks like the collision with the player. This is the collision with the bullets. And notice how it calls the game manager and as to add points, even though we haven't even had it write the game manager yet. It's already referencing methods in there and things like that. There's an add point. So we'll make sure that all lines up, which it should. And notice it's sending the size. And then it's destroying the asteroid. And then say... asteroids come in 3 sizes. The largest size is 50 when it is destroyed, it creates, I'll say when a 50 asteroid is destroyed, the system should spawn 2 size 20 asteroids, and then when the size 20 asteroid is destroyed, it should spawn 3 size 10 asteroids. Let's see what it can do with that. If it can do that, I will freak out. Might be a little too much. It's like giving it it's like, is it able to look at that and determine, okay, so that's what I need to write the code for, and then actually write the code for it? Might be a little too much. So we see some of the limitations possibly. You can achieve this by adding a new method to the asteroid class that will handle the spawning of smaller asteroids when the asteroid is destroyed. Okay, so we'll see how that works. I'm tripping out a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I just wrote this out up here, and we'll see how close it is. Adding a new method that will handle spawning a smaller asteroid when the asteroid is destroyed. And there it is. And then there's the spawn asteroid class that obviously when it's a 10, it'll fall through and not spawn any more asteroids. And you can see the loops. It's using the loops there to determine how many of each. And there it is. Note that you also need to adjust the bullet class to check the size of the asteroid and adjust the score accordingly. Okay, please create a bullet class and update player ship so it uses that bullet class to destroy the asteroids. So it's just insanely powerful. It truly is. We got it to add in object pooling. We got to add in respawning smaller asteroids when the bigger ones get destroyed. Truly an impressive piece of software, the way it takes what you write in English and converts it. Because let's remember, it actually took what I wrote here in the description of the largest sizes of these asteroids, and it converted that exactly into code right here with what I said. And so if somebody might be watching this that's a non-coder, and you think to yourself, maybe I can't be the best code writer at first, but code reading and learning how to read code and being able to ask something like ChatGPT, I'm just telling it what I want, and it's writing this code out for me that's remarkably good. It just is. And then it's also doing it in my language. If I had it do it in Python, we would be seeing the same kinds of things, but in Python. Okay, so let's see what it did. Very impressive. It's even breaking it up into pieces of where you put different things. You need to update the bullet class to take the damage parameter. See, they never gave us a bullet class, but we can tell it to write a bullet class. Oh no, here's the bullet class. Here's the bullet. So here's the bullet class it made, because before we didn't have a bullet class. Now, so here's the bullet class and the collision, and deal damage to the asteroid. It looks like there might be a little confusion in that it thinks that the asteroid has to have a certain amount of damage, like one shot doesn't kill the asteroid. So we have the bullet class that can get passed in damage. And then when we shoot, we're setting that. So I think it kind of a little bit got off the rails here. In the player ship, assign damage to the bullet. Let me just try to say we don't need to track damage on the bullet. When an asteroid is shot, always destroyed. Then if that asteroid, then the class, the asteroid class, should spawn smaller asteroids as the code already has. So we'll see if it can run that. That was really fast. So I told it that it gave us this damage in there. I said we don't need that, and so we're gonna see it's gonna simplify it and give us a little bit closer to what we would expect. So that shows an example of, you have to be able to at least read the code and see that it kind of got off on a tangent there with that whole damage thing. What we just want it to do is when the bullet destroys it, so notice how it says here, it knows, I like that it writes out what the code does. It puts comments literally on almost every line. So it's really pretty impressive when you think about it. Also in the player ship class, you don't need to assign the damage attribute to the bullet, so you can remove the line from the shoot method. So it is like right here. We can remove that. So it's telling us that, and I like that it's doing that. It's telling us how to clean up our code. So now we got our asteroid method, we got our player ship method, we got our bullet, or classes, we got our bullet class. Let's go ahead and jump in here, and what is our next class? Let's do a couple more classes before we end off this video. I think you can see the power. Okay, so we haven't made our game manager class yet. Okay, so now let's write the game manager class. I could just say now write the game manager class. So now it's going to write the game manager class, taking into account these other classes. It's truly something to see if someone hasn't seen it before. And I hope you will comment, like down below, subscribe. Make sure you click that like and subscribe button, but comments help a lot too. It really tells YouTube you're engaged with this content, and the more comments they see, the more they're going to show this to other people. And I think you can see, as a developer and a coder, that having a tool like this is going to be a bit of a game changer for us as it becomes more powerful. Even this to think about where this is at now with our hands on it. With this OpenAI, people are going to be able to tweak it even more to handle and automatically, integrate with some of our tools. Right now, there's a lot of copying and pasting, and you'll notice that it looked like it might have just timed out. Like it's just too much for it to write, and it's not going to. It might not be giving us any more here. So it looks pretty good. So here's the code. I was just talking, we weren't even really looking at it, but we have our lives, we have the score, a reference to the player ship, a reference to the game over screen, which is very smart. It's including all these things. It's setting it up as a singleton. And I remember it used the dot instance in the other code. So remember when I said it's calling a class it hasn't even written the code for yet. That was up here. I saw it doing that. Where is that? There's the game. Oh, here, like for example, game manager dot instant reduce lives. So we need to make sure that it named reduce lives in here, inside of this. And there it is, reduce lives. So that's how it calls it. These classes are all hooking together, and it says please complete the rest of the methods in the game manager after add points. See if it knows what I'm talking about. So the nice thing is if it gets cut off you can kind of tell it, what to do. Oh, wow. That's so neat. So it knew when I said after the add points, it said here's the rest of the game over. So the game over method was the method, and it didn't even redo all of it. The first part, it just finished it. And then we can see the way it finishes here, that's the whole thing. And then it's given us a method to save the high score. Oh, that is so neat. So it's even given us here a method to save the high score using player prefs. If the score is greater than the high score that's inside the player prefs, it adds it and saves it into the high score, and then saves that player. And then we can retrieve. It shows us the code for retrieving the high score as well. So it's like, it's kind of neat that it just kind of threw that in as like an extra little bonus, I guess, that we can have here. So now I think we would say, let's just do one more class, and then I'll finish this up. I think this is an interesting way to see code generation, like next gen kind of stuff here. What we're looking at. You got to go. So I probably would use some organizing tools rather than just keeping it all in one big ChatGPT. Although it's kind of nice to have it here, to be honest. So input manager class. I'm curious about that. Please create the input manager class. And you can see why I told it to tell us all of the classes ahead of time. I think that's helpful to the AI. If you don't do that, it's like and you just say make a game manager class. It really doesn't have the same context as if it already knows that you've given it a list of classes that it's going to be making and how it's going to hook them together and name them and everything. So it's a pretty sophisticated AI. You can see by the way I talked to it, and I asked it for the ship changing so that different ships. Or different asteroids, so that different asteroids would spawn. If the big one dies, then there's 2 more of the medium size, and when those go, there's 3 more of the smaller ones. And I think the scores are backwards actually on how that goes in the real game, and that would be an interesting maybe thing to redo. So here, let's look what it did here. So our input manager is on the player's ship, and it basically handles the turning and the thrusting and the shooting and the moving. Okay, so then you will also need to make sure the player ship and manager are both attached to the same game object. You would also add a new input mapping for the WASD keys. So look at how it remembered here that I wanted to use both the arrow keys and the WASD. And it's checking here, and how that we could even use a input get that button down 1 to do the shooting instead, and how to make the input manager more flexible. So notice how it's using horizontal, vertical, and fire 1 here. So we'll say please refactor the player ship class so it uses the input manager class. And just like that, I'm confident that it's now going to rebuild that player ship class for us, and it won't be using the update inside of there and the keys hard-coded and all that it did from my initial statement. It's now doing all that inside of the input manager. I knew it was going to be able to do it. You can see here where it's created a reference to the input manager now, and that means that you're not going to have anything inside of here notice how it's now looking to the input manager to get this stuff and move the ship based up on what comes out of the input manager. And it's simplified the code, and pretty impressive, I think, in terms of showing the power of AI to be a generative tool. especially in the hands of people that can understand that. And so it might be that this is just, it can't write anymore. The fact it doesn't say regenerate, I'll say I need the rest of the functions in playership. And it's smart enough, I think, now to know what I mean by that. It's pretty crazy. And it even repeated the comment there, so I kind of know where it left off at. So there's limits to how much it can send back. There's some limits, I think, into its robustness, I guess. Again, I would caution people just a little bit about trying to expect that you can rely on this for free indefinitely at any time you choose to build businesses around using this tool, because it's still in a research phase, and when you can't get access to it, then you feel like you're really losing productivity. Depending upon what you're working on, you can see the power of this thing is immense, and the fact that it explains to you what the methods do in English, and then it's explaining here of now how we have to expose the inputs as public fields in the input manager, so that it can get access to them inside of the other method. So we could probably ask it to do some refactoring and things like that. But I think this video is already getting a little bit long in length, and I just wanted to kind of let everyone see the power here of a generative AI making a game that everybody's familiar with, an Asteroids game, and I imagine being watched by people that maybe at least have written some code in C# and built some games before. But this, if I can get to say 1,000 views on this within a couple of weeks, I will actually build this game out and make a video from beginning to end. I'll do it live or something if people really are interested, and we'll take this code and actually build it out in a Unity game and just see how close it got and how much work it takes to actually build this into a working game, and where the AI can help us and maybe push it a little bit. I felt like I really pushed the boundaries here a little bit with what I thought it was capable of, and it still came through for me. I was especially blown away. Especially blown away by when it took that very kind of wordy thing about the spawning of the smaller asteroids, and it was able to take and break that down. So that to me was a kind of a high point of just showing the way it wrote that code with the loops and the conditional statements and everything I needed just based upon that text I wrote, all in context of a program that I'm writing, and it seems to know where everything is and how to rewrite all that code. I think it's pretty darn impressive. And the other impressive part was the pooling, where I told it to make that code more efficient by making a pooling for it instead of just initializing it every time. And to write the entire code and give tips, it added that high score feature in that we didn't even ask for, and it just said, hey, maybe you'd like to have that. I think that's the kind of thing you want in an AI, that every once in a while when there's something like that, that it's showing that it really understands the game design that you're building, and it understands the code that it needs to build it. It's truly impressive piece of software. So please leave a comment down below of maybe another game that you'd like to see me do this with, and instead maybe you would like me to build out a game instead. Obviously building out these games takes time, and I need the views and the YouTube membership and subscribers. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you like this video, and we'll see just how far we can push this generative AI into creating games for us.